Greenpeace claims renewable energy, quote, smartly used can and will meet our demands. No oil spills, no climate change, no radiation danger, no nuclear waste. The Sierra Club has a campaign called Beyond Coal, another called Beyond Oil, and another Beyond Natural Gas. By the way, their Beyond Coal campaign is being funded largely with a $50 million grant from former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. 350.org, which was one of the key organizers of the big climate march in New York City in September that attracted some 300,000 people, has a campaign called Fossil Free, and it's aiming to convince universities, colleges, and other entities that have large pensions, pension funds, and endowments to divest themselves of any ownership in hydrocarbon production. They are welcome to push that agenda, and they are getting some traction with it. But again, the reality is that renewables cannot even keep pace with the growth in global energy demand, much less displace significant quantities of hydrocarbons. This is not an opinion, it is an easily provable fact. 350.org has pushed this, one of their slogans, which is do the math. Okay, let's do the math. And I promise you, it's simple. Since 1985, global electricity demand, and I'm just going to focus on electricity. I'm going to forget about oil, even though oil is irreplaceable in transportation, and now provides about 33 or 34% of all global energy use. I'm going to ignore oil. Just look at electricity. Since 1985, global electricity demand has been growing by roughly 450 terawatt hours per year. That's 450 trillion watt hours. We've added about 1 Brazil's worth of new electricity demand every year for the last 3 decades, and the projections from BP, ExxonMobil, the IEA, the EIA are all in pretty uniform agreement that we will be adding about 1 new Brazil of demand every year through 2030 or 2040. So the objective here is 1 new Brazil per year of generation. 450 terawatt hours is the increment that we have to meet. So let's look at wind, one of the darlings of the environmental movement. What would it require then if we were just to use wind to meet that 450 terawatt hours of new demand? I'm not talking about displacing significant existing demand, just looking forward at future demand growth. What would it take to produce that 450 terawatt hours of electricity with wind? Well, it would require installing roughly 240,000 megawatts of new wind energy capacity every year. The power density of wind energy is 1 watt per square meter. What's power density? It's a basic metric in physics. Power density is a measure of energy flow. It can be harnessed in a given area, volume, or mass. The power density of wind energy, and I show it in smaller, faster, lighter, denser, cheaper, is 1 watt per square meter. We need 240,000 megawatts, 240 billion watts. At 1 watt per square meter, that's 240 billion square meters. That's 240,000 square kilometers, roughly 93,000 square miles. Every year, just to keep pace with electricity demand growth by using wind would require us to cover a land area the size of the state of Minnesota with nothing but wind turbines. That's a land area the size of the United Kingdom. Every year, just to meet incremental demand growth. The math here is elementary school simple. Let me make it even simpler for you, but take it down to a daily rate of installation of wind turbines. On a daily rate, we would have to cover a land area of about 660 square kilometers, or roughly 11 Manhattan Islands every day with wind turbines, just to meet incremental demand growth. This is not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. I'm hopeful. I believe in technology. I don't believe in miracles. What about solar? I'm bullish on solar. And for the record, I'm opposed to all energy subsidies unless I'm getting them. I have 3,200 watts of solar panels on the roof of my house in Austin, Texas. Why? Because the city of Austin paid 2/3 of the cost. What, am I stupid? Sure, I'll take the subsidy. My neighbors come by and say, like your solar panels? I say, thank you. You paid for them. Takes a little shine off of them, it seems. I'm bullish on solar. Solar is coming down in price dramatically. And if we can twin solar energy production with even moderate amounts of battery storage, that's a big deal, particularly for people in island economies and rural economies. But let's go back again to the issue of scale. What would it require to meet that 450 terawatt hours of new electricity generation every year with solar? We can look at Germany and figure it out very quickly. Germany has more installed solar capacity than any other country, roughly 36 gigawatts, 36,000 megawatts. Last year, all of that capacity produced 30 terawatt hours of electricity. We need 450 terawatt hours. Simple math. 450 divided by 30, we would need 15 times as much solar capacity as now exists in Germany, and we'd have to install it every year just to meet incremental demand. Let me give you one more set of numbers, and it's on US coal versus US solar. If you think coal consumption and coal generation in the United States is dead, think again. Last year, coal consumption in the United States rose by 5%. Now, I've just told you that coal consumption in the US is falling, and it has. But remember, in the last 18 months or so, 24 months, natural gas prices have risen. And so utilities have taken the rational economic move and said, well, we'll burn coal because now coal's a little cheaper for us, so we'll burn a little more coal. And they are burning a little more coal. 5% increase in 2013. That percentage increase is minuscule compared to the growth that occurred in solar last year here in the United States, up 114%. That's huge growth. But let's look at the absolute numbers. The increase in coal use in the United States last year was 380,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. That 5% increase amounts to 380,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. All of the solar projects in the United States, including my solar panels on the roof of my house, produced the equivalent of 42,000 barrels of oil last year. In the United States, last year, just the increase in coal consumption is equal to 9 times the contribution of every solar project in the United States. These are the facts. And if you don't believe me, you can look at the BP Statistical Review and do your own calculations. But this is the issue. These are the facts that have to be brought forward over and over and over and over again, because the politics of green energy, the romanticism about green energy is so incredibly strong. I'm frequently asked, why is that? And I talk about it in my new book, but it is this romanticism that, and in fact this idea that is very deep inside of us. And it's a myth that we have bitten from the apple of knowledge. We have sinned because we have too much technology. It goes back to the book of Genesis and Adam and Eve. And we see it in Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the idea of the noble savage, through Henry David Thoreau in Walden, where he said, cultivate poverty like a garden herb. From Genesis to Rousseau to Thoreau to Rachel Carson, Edward Abbey, and today Bill McKibben and Naomi Klein. The idea is we have to go back to nature. We have sinned, we have too much technology, we're doing too much, traveling too much, using too much, and because of that we have sinned, and repentance means going back to nature, to something like 40 acres and a mule. Ladies and gentlemen, I ain't going back, not willingly.